Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Always Smiling Faces podcast on the Gallowgateshots YouTube channel, which is now part of 90 Min's Football Network. So we are here. We've got some big things to talk about tonight. As always, it's myself, Chris, joined by Decker, Mark, and Bestie. So we'll start with the good news. Congratulations, Mr. Best.
Thank you very much.
So as people who are watching...
You should have waited to see if anybody guessed the little things
straight in there.
They're just really far away.
So everybody who is watching this rather than listening to the audio podcast, as you can see behind Bestie, there's two little miniature kits. Bestie announced today that he's having his second child. He's joining the two-child club, which isn't a great club to join. Sorry, Bestie.
Well, Amy is, at least. We haven't had confirmation that Bestie's joining. But,
yeah, that is true.
We'll believe him.
Well, I mean, I suppose I've got you can't prove, can you, really, without going down the kind of the dad check line and all that. Like, so I'm happy to take a word for it.
But anyway, congratulations, mate. Job well done.
Yeah, not too bad.
Well done. Well done. I didn't know you had it in you.
That's 2 and 2 seasons now. It's I say I'm on par with Joe Linton, more or less.
Yeah, you're probably a slightly bit better than Joe Linton, to be fair, mate.
Yeah, it's good, like,
frankly, that's prolific.
Let's bring it back down to reality. Obviously, we done the live watch along on Saturday evening, straightly followed by our instant reaction, which also went as a live viewing. We all said, well, I'm saying we all said that we didn't, but I was pretty confident that Bruce wouldn't be here at this point. Now, Decker, you put a bet on that he would be sacked.
Well,
you put 50 quid on Bruce to be the next Premier League manager to be sacked. We hear rumour has it that Ashley's advisors has been telling journalists that Bruce isn't going anywhere soon. And because they want to repay Bruce for his loyalty, that baffled me, that sentence, more than what it did to stand by him. But I'll come to you, Decker, because you were the one that's just spunked 50 quid on this. How are we in this point, man? How at this point now where he's still the manager? And I think Mark said it. No other Premier League team, no other team in world football, I think Mark said, would stick by their manager with 2 wins in 20. So why have we done this?
I don't have the answer, to be honest with you. I mean, I wish I did. I think the loyalty thing, I can only really put that down to, I think someone commented back to me when I said loyalty, I didn't understand that. Somebody said that, is it because he's been, like, he hasn't criticised Ashley at any point in the media? He's never, ever, ever said anything bad about upstairs or lack of money or lack of, I don't know, belief in his ability, like just nothing. So I don't know if maybe Ashley classes that as loyalty. I'm not sure. But how we're in this situation is beyond me. It really, really is. I think that, it's a funny one because I do like it when clubs try to give a manager a chance. Like, there's so many clubs out there just go through managers, every 5 minutes. 5 games that haven't won, they're out. 6 games out, and I can respect that to a degree. And the clubs try to stick by him, but now would definitely say before, even Sheffield United, I keep mentioning that was the game for me where we should have gone. But you look at it now, 2 wins in 20 and all the rest of it. Now surely is the time, and especially the game that's just gone, being the biggest game of our season, losing it so convincingly, that should have been the final game.
I'll come to you, Bestie. Those shirts are really putting us off. I'm not going to lie, mate. Really, really putting us off. Kind of like there's a gap between your shoulders and the shirts.
The yellow one's lush, isn't it? The yellow one's so lush.
It is. We'll talk about that yellow one later on. What's your thoughts on it, Bestie? I think you said during that instant reaction that Bruce would definitely still be here.
I have no doubt. Like, it's weird because during the game, I remember feeling like it felt like this could be it. It felt like it can't possibly. In a normal club, if you want to put normal in inverted commas, he wouldn't last 2 wins in 20 games, would have gotten the sack long before the 20 games had been played. Newcastle being Newcastle, and we've seen. I mentioned on Friday night that it reminded us of when Pardew was manager, and there were so many games where I thought, well, that's the one, that's got to be it. And then here we were a week later, 2 weeks later, as it'll be in this case because of the international break, and he's still there, and he's it's suicide. It's signing your own place in the championship next season by doing it. I think like it's And I wondered when Keith Downey it was that I read who'd said it was Bruce's loyalty being repaid, and I was scratching my head thinking he's been here a season and a half, nearly 2 seasons, and the only thing it could be loyalty wise is what Declan said about not criticising, not pushing things upstairs, not deflecting. It just kind of getting on with things. Just doesn't. There's nothing. He's. I don't know. I think there's a lot said about loyalty and stuff these days. And if my work, if I was doing as badly as my job as he is, and I was looking at £4 million in a mouth by packing in, I probably wouldn't either. But it doesn't make you a fan. It doesn't make you one of us. It's a completely different situation. Yeah,
I'll come to you, Mark, who is tonight's sporting an absolute fantastic and underrated Newcastle United shirt. I would say I love that orange shirt. Great shirt. Looking at a great season as Newcastle United fans. What I wanted to mention is both Decker and Bestie mentioned their loyalty being probably the loyalty towards Mike Ashley and Charlie by not slagging them off. Steve Bruce has slagged everybody else off, including his own playing staff. But for some reason, he hasn't criticised the likes of Mike Ashley and Lee Charney, wherever he is these days. From Mike Ashley's perspective, Steve Bruce doing that, it's a complete polar opposite to what it was. And that was 6.5 minutes in, but the name's coming up. So what it was under Rafa Benitez, because Rafa Benitez was that manager who towards the end of that season, his last season at Newcastle United, he was literally coming out and saying, this isn't good enough. The fans deserve more. The owner doesn't give a shit, basically.
Yeah, and that sums it up. The fans want more. It wasn't just the fans, was it? Rafa wanted more. He could see what the club was capable of doing in the right circumstances. But yes, you're right. He would question Ashley. He would question his motivation and why he made certain choices or why he didn't make certain choices. And you look at this situation with Bruce, and there's no logical reason as to why he would persist with Steve Bruce as manager. As you've just said, Chris, after 2 wins in 20, we're sitting in this situation, and you would just love to understand what his thought process is, because it beggars belief that you can be sitting here in the position that we are at a risk of jeopardizing a potential sale, because apparently he's still pushing for it. He's doing all this legal challenge and stuff like that. It's going to obviously affect the value of the club as well. So if he's wanting to make the most of it and do what he says he wants to do, which is to sell the club to allow it to be taken forward, why would he risk everything to stick with Steve Bruce? And I guess, yes, he's shown some sort of loyalty back towards him, but there's just no rhyme or reason as to why we find ourselves in the situation that we are.
Yeah, I'll stay with you, Mark. Obviously, on the back of that, do you not think we're at the point now, and I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, a couple of games ago now, do you not think we're kind of at a standoff now between Ashley and Bruce, where Ashley is hoping that Bruce is going to walk, but then Bruce is hoping that he's going to get sacked to get that payoff? And we've seen it over the last 2 games now, where Bruce has started to blame himself, something which we haven't seen, and he's starting to say, I take full responsibility for this. Do you think this is at the point where Bruce is basically saying, I've kind of had enough here now, and why leave when I could basically push Mike Astley to make that decision and I get that £4 million? Because we've mentioned this a few times. Bruce wants to be gone out of this football club before fans are allowed to voice their opinion on the pitch side.
So it's clear to everybody that his time is up, except, as you've just said in his comments, it appeared that he thought his time was up. There's been lots of rumours that the players thought his time was up that have came out over the course of the weekend, but for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to be taken forward. Now, if Steve Bruce is under that impression, I can understand he wants to get that payoff. But look, when you've got his amount of money, is there really much of a difference between 4 million and 2 million? obviously it's £2 million to the normal person. It's a huge sum of money, but he's already a multi-millionaire. He'd get a payoff anyway. So why don't you just do what most clubs do and most managers and owners do when you're in this situation? Is you come to a mutual agreement, have a discussion. All he's got to say is, I don't think it's working out as best as I can. Steve Bruce turned around and says, well, yeah, I think I've maybe taken it as far as I can. Things aren't working out. Right, how do we take this forward? Obviously, I don't want to resign. You don't want us to sack us. So we need to make an agreement on how we move forward with this. Now, whether they're both being so stubborn that neither of them wants to do that, we know how stubborn Ashley can be. We've seen much evidence over the years of his absolute pig-headed stubbornness that he can show. But when we know he's a gambler, but he's gambling with millions and millions of pounds. He's gambling with the future of this club. He's gambling with all of our lives, because it means a hell of a lot more to us than it does to him. And he just needs to make a decision one way or another. And if he is going to keep him, then he needs to come out and say that and try and explain the reasons why. I don't for 1 minute believe that he will. But the other option on the other side of things is that them two need to get their heads together and come up with a solution that will allow us to move on as a club. And that solution has to be mutual termination of the contract. It has to be.
Yeah, it's something which I mentioned last week, that you would hope that both parties would meet halfway and basically say, right, give us half the payout, then take it from there. I'm not sure who it was. Might be you, Mark, that mentioned this, but we'll come straight back to Decker. In regards to Mike Ashley wanting to sell the club to take it forward, I think we've all agreed in the past that Mike Ashley doesn't have to sell the club to take it forward. We had a manager in place that was going to take the club forward. And if you had to just give him what he wanted, which wasn't a huge amount, when you look at the grand scheme of things, what we've paid for to bring Bruce and his coaching staff in, if you had to give Rafa Benitez what he wanted previously, are you all right?
Yeah. Oh, that's better. Oh, no, sorry.
Steve Bruce is looking in the window.
No, you see that there? That button there does that look like a black dot to you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because I looked and thought, what the fuck's the button?
Is it half in?
No, it's the light. It's just the light. It's all see it now. Then
it's back now.
Sorry, apologise.
This is great for an audio podcast.
Sorry.
Yeah. So Mike Ashley had something great in here. He didn't have to sell the club.
Yes.
He didn't have to look at selling the club. If he had built on that project under Rafa Benitez and worked with Rafa, then we would have been in a completely different situation right now.
Well, I'd also like to say I've just paid more attention to detail of that button than Steve Bruce does to an opposition, right? So, but anyway, yes, of course. What I think with the Rafa situation, I wonder if maybe Ashley and his thought, it's down the line where he will always want more. Rafa will always want more, want another player, want improvements made here. And maybe Ashley's thinking, I can't really be asked every window to have that conversation. Which is wrong, by the way. I'm not saying that in the defence of Ashley. I'm just saying that's maybe what he has thought. I might give him what he wants now, but then what happens in January? I've got another battle on my hands. However, as I said last week, and I'll say it again, there was people in the club coming out saying that, God, since we're getting a world-class manager in place, we know what it means now. We understand how it should be run. We understand where we should be going as a club. Charnley was coming out in the programme saying loads of bullshit. And it did feel the whole club had turned on its head and everybody collectively knew, okay, this is what can make a successful football club. We're then obviously getting rid of Rafa. In the as I've said before, the owner's best option of trying to carry that on was Steve Bruce. He's honestly sat there. I mean, my question, a lot of years, I don't think I've asked this before. Remember the list apparently they had, and he was 13th. I know the club said that he was top of that list. If he was top of that list, right, well, we are fucked, because if he was top of their wanted list, Christ knows who's going to be on it now.
We know for fine well he wasn't top of that list. We
know that's true,
for fine well he wasn't. The club just came over that to show a bit of what's the word I'm
loyalty towards him.
Loyalty towards Bruce, basically. No, you weren't 20th on the list, Steve. You're first. Bollocks. I would hate to see the list if he's first in it.
There was people publicly turning the job down, wasn't there? So that goes to prove that the job was offered out to various managers.
Yeah.
It was clear that Arteta was the first choice, and Arteta didn't want it.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Well, but in regards to the Bruce situation now, I totally agree with what you've said about the mutual agreement, and I will be honest here, and Bestie, I know, hates him with a passion in regards to how he's treated other clubs and, just walked out and things like that. I did honestly think if we got to this stage that he would willingly call it time and go, it is right, listen, I'm clearly not up to the task. I'm getting absolute abuse every angle that's coming at us. My son's getting shit. Probably his own son's told him, right, that he should be leaving. Surely that conversation's happened. He's probably said to his dad,
mate, Shearer told him not to take the job.
Well, that's true to him not to take. He must have people within his own little fan club saying maybe it's time to walk away. And it is shocking that he won't even have that conversation and maybe a mutual termination. He's just hands down saying, I'm not leaving.
That could be from both sides, or that could be from both sides. So Bruce might be sat there waiting for that conversation to happen. It's just not coming from those above him. Bestie, in regards to Bruce now, he is a wealthy man, despite this. So do you think it's because he in his head, and look across media now, look across the fan base, the tide has shifted a lot with the media, with the majority of them, I would say. A lot of them have been coming out saying, no, he has to go. Like, there's no way that he can stay in this position. Do you think now he realizes he's at that edge of the cliff? So rather than stepping, he's just waiting for that last gust of wind to push him over now? Because it's so close to happening. It has to be.
It's really hard to say, mate. I mean, when you look at, I often wonder, like, when you're in that bubble, as it were, like when you're the one kind of in the club and you're taking training, or you've got your coach, you've got your playing staff, you've got the kind of mechanisms of the club around you. And especially this season when the crowds haven't been allowed in and it's all been total keyboard warriors and whatnot, I don't know if there's an appreciation of how bad a job he's doing there. I mean, you hear tales about people, why don't you go and tell Lee Charnley, when he said that the other week, I think that was quite telling, because that would imply that has been happening.
100%, yeah.
So he must surely know that all's not rosy. All I can think of is Mike Bassett. Mike Bassett, when he's getting pelters in press conferences and stuff, and he's doggedly hanging on. And ironically, Mike Bassett was England manager, fictionally, obviously England manager. Just to break that illusion for anyone that wondered if it was a documentary. I know Decker is talking shit that the video of Kevin Keegan when he left the England job. And I sat and watched it, and I'd seen it a few times before. I watched it live, when I was a kid and stuff. And to watch that now, Keegan basically admit, I'm just not good enough. I had to go. I'm not good enough. The fans have let us know, that I thought I could get more, but I couldn't. And that's the England job. That's not the Newcastle job. I know Bruce purports to be a Newcastle fan. That's Keegan, who played very well for England. Did well in the '82 World Cup. A proud Englishman saying, I've had a swing at it. Maybe it's lasted longer than I should have done after the year 2000, but I've had a go here. And when he packed in to qualify for the World Cup, that's one of the bits I had in mind, Graham, actually.
I wish we would just play 4-4-2 if I'm being honest.
So Graham Dougal has just put a comment in there saying at least Mike Bassett wanted to play a 4-4-2.
That's true. Right?
But I with Keegan there, it was someone just saying like, I'm pretty good at what I do. I think I've maybe been here a bit too long, but that's enough. I'm not good enough. And like I say, England qualified for the World Cup. He left at such a time. I think it was only the first qualifier against was last game at Wembley, wasn't it? Pete Mahaman scored for Germany. Yeah. He left and England qualified for the World Cup. And to me, I think if Shearer had stayed and if Gerrard had been fit, might well have won the World Cup. But that's another story altogether. But yeah, to go from that to Steve Bruce, who is taking Newcastle down, there's no two ways about it. I'm totally convinced we'll get relegated with him in charge. Might already be too late to change things. But for him to kind of, I'm not going to let the team down. I'm going to do what's right for Newcastle and then not do what's right for Newcastle. The difference is so stark.
I just want to jump in for 2 seconds there. I completely agree with what Bessie said there as well. And I'm going to go back to someone who I really didn't like. Ruud Gullit handed in he writ out his notice after the Sunderland game and refused any payout. Like he said, I don't want a penny.
Yeah.
Like I know, and that's like, I don't think any of us particularly liked Ruud Gullit at the time for what happened, but even he's managed to leave us some dignity.
Well, that Sunderland game, before he even wrote that letter, that Sunderland game was his resignation, mate. Leaving Shearer on the bench. That was his resignation right there.
But he's held his hands up and admitted
he's had the decency to do it.
I fucked this up, right? And I'm out, and I don't want any money, and I'm off. And as Bessie said there about Keegan, I mean, how much respect? I mean, I don't think many people would have respect for Bruce, but you would certainly go, well, at least you've done the honourable thing there. You've held your hands up and says, listen, guy, I've tried my best. It hasn't been enough, and I'm off. At the very least, you know.
And I think that Keegan interview, I'll come to you in a second more. I think that Keegan interview, which I think it might be True Faith who shared it first of all. Keegan came out and he said that despite the board wanting to keep us on, basically, I'm coming to the point now where I know that it takes basically an exceptional manager to go to the next level. And he said, that's not me. He basically came out with that, that's not me. And you've got to take your hat off to him and applaud him to have that. It's disbelief in himself, really. And he realizes he's not good enough to do that job. So he's thinking, I'll step aside for the good of the team and let somebody else to come in and do a better job than what I physically can or ever can. Bruce won't do that.
And that's the difference in the awareness that Keegan has over his own abilities and where it might be lacking. Whereas Steve Bruce, we've talked umpteen times about his self-awareness and his complete lack of it, because again, the way he just approaches every end of game after another defeat, another result, it's always an excuse and always a reason, until this weekend where he then held up his hand and said, maybe it is me, maybe I am the problem. But that came too late. You just said there about Ruud Gullit, in that Sunderland game being his resignation. How many times can you look back across the last 3 months and say that was Steve Bruce's resignation? There's umpteen performances where you should have looked at that and said he needs to go now. We've done it. We've sat here and said he needs to go now. The ones that spring.
I think the difference is, Morg, I will come back to you, but I think the difference is because you're leaving Alan Shearer on the bench. I think that's what I was referring to in regards to the resignation. Now, not obviously the result of the performance, but obviously you're leaving your best player. Like, imagine Steve Bruce went in the game and left Callum Wilson the same Maximo on the bench. Like, it's
he's done it all season scenario. He's done it all season, hasn't he? He's done well.
He done it at the start of the season with Almiron, he did, yeah.
I don't think it's really an equivalent to Shearer now, is it? And ironically, Bobby Robson's last game, Shearer was on the bench away at Villa. The 4-2 defeat, so maybe that's what Bruce needs to do. Sign Shearer when
put him on the bench.
Stick him on the bench, that's me, lads.
I think as well, some of that, because obviously I didn't listen to his comments, so I know Mark listened, and then obviously he sort of like told us what he said. There was something he said that really pissed us off when I listened to it back, was about that he wasn't expecting how Brighton approached the game. He kind of mentioned something like that. He was shocked at how Brighton played.
Shocked, I think the word he said, yeah.
And I was like shocked. I was like, every single fan knew how Brighton were going to play. Christ, they beat with 3-0. I know. They beat with 3-0 in one build. So how was it a surprise? Just that line alone, tells you everything you need to know about the man in regards to he's simply not good enough. That's that line alone for me. Like
it's a surprise because he. It's a surprise because he doesn't do any research on the team. He doesn't look at how another team plays. He probably looks at the league table or the last couple of results and thinks, oh well, they're losing. That's why he thinks there's still 6 or 7 teams in it. Because
you know what it is, Mark? I would tend to disagree with that, because you would hope the basics of any manager that would do research on that team, but I just don't think Bruce has got that football knowledge. And despite him keep on going, saying he's nearly played 1,000 games, I couldn't give a shit how many games you've managed. I think he's probably has done his research, but he's just not clued up enough to do anything with that research. It's like giving me quantum physics. I could look at it. I haven't got a clue what to do with it. I think it's a similar sort of thing with him. You give him Chinese, he's not going to understand it, is he?
I don't think he'd not convinced.
I don't think he'd be able to relay the message either. I think the thing you've got to remember, you've got performance analyst, data analyst that work for the club that provide Steve Bruce with that information. I'm not necessarily thinking Bruce is going to sit there and know everything. I mean, that's not, but someone will provide him with that information. But I wouldn't entrust him to be able to then on the training pitch impact the players with what the knowledge he's been told at all. And we've heard it time and time again. Danny Rose said, didn't he, that was not so long ago, something about days off from training. Couldn't believe how many days off he was getting. Someone from Villa said it was very much a case of training was ball in the middle, go and play, lads. That style is gone. Keegan used to do that, don't get us wrong. But the game was different back then. The game has moved on so much. It's so much more tactical now.
It's generations ago where you could do that.
Yeah.
It's
back in the day where after training you go for a pint. That's how long it is, man.
It is.
It is.
But the thing about he's managed so many games, that means nothing. The bloke who managed Jar Roofing was manager for 34 years, and I didn't see anyone clamouring for him to get in the Premier League.
The thing is, Bessie, he keeps on mentioning about this number of games. I think it's 900 odd. Like, I hope to God he's not managing Newcastle when that hits 1,000, but he probably will be. But he talks about this like it's some sort of feather in his cap. But like, Steve, like, look at the percentage of wins and the goals conceded and the goals scored in that one. That's not something to be proud of. It's really not.
Absolutely right.
Every club he's... I was just going to say that, Bestie, at every club he's been to, he's had around about a 30% win ratio. He's less than that here in his time here. So he's got to look at his history in the game and think. And look, we made no bones about it. We knew when he got that job is that he'd probably have a decent first season, because that's what he does. He comes in, he gets them enjoying playing football, putting some performances in, and we gave him credit for that. We said, well done, you've pulled it together, you've done well, you've got us to a mid-table position. The real test is then what happens from that. In every single club he's been at, he has failed following on from that first season. It always ends the same way. He can take any very well-run club, he'll come in, he'll give them a bit of a bounce and a bit of a lift, but I tell you what, every club he is left in a worse state than when he took over. So
it is longevity, and I'll come back to you, Bestie. It's telling in his interview, I think it was pre the Villa game, when he comes out and said that Villa are in a great position now since I've left. That's telling.
Self-awareness again, isn't it? Self-awareness again.
Yeah. He was at Villa. He got in the playoff final, set up the draw against Fulham, got beat, and then I think there was something like 12th when they pumped him in the end of the Championship, and then I'm sure they got promoted that season, didn't they? Beat.
They did.
I'm sure they did. They got a second or third
playoffs,
season. Then.
Unbelievable.
I think so. I was, because Jack Grealish's boots were like basically bits of wet cardboard, weren't they? And look at Villa now. I mean, Dean Smith isn't exactly the most revered or the most fashionable, but he's doing a good job with Villa. I mean, you could argue that having someone like Jack Grealish has been a massive help, because Grealish is world class. Like, but
he's there when Bruce was there, though.
Oh yeah, he is. I think I've just seen Mark Corby put a thing on Twitter earlier saying he reckons Bruce tried to pump him at Villa. I mean, I can't remember that, but Mark knows more than I do about stuff like, so I'll take his word for it. But yeah, like Villa since then have come up in that. I mean, they're very lucky to stay up last season, but now they're established. They're a Premier League. Villa, if they keep on going the way they are, will be a Premier League club for years to come now. And sacking Steve Bruce is what did it.
Yeah, their curvature is only going up, isn't it?
It seems to be. Even if it plateaus, I've got my league table on the fridge here, and they're 9th on there. I don't know if that's still the case, because that's a couple of weeks old, but
they've struggled since Grealish has been injured. They've lost a few games in a row. But I think the point you're making spot on in regards to, Bruce left them at 13th. I think it was 12th or 13th, and they got promoted in the same year. And then you look at them now. That surely has to tell you the frailties of that man. That manager. And it's not even just that, is it? Even if you just look at what he's doing now for us, in regards to, tell me a player who you think's getting better. I honestly feel every player has regressed. Every single player at his disposal.
At the start of the season, we said Shelby. I think we did say Shelby. Might be in the last season, to be fair, saying that he had a slight step up really in his performances. But even now, he's dropping like a stone again.
Right off,
Yeah, if you think over the 18, 19 months he's been, or maybe it's probably close to 2 years now, that he's been here, there has been patches where you might say, oh, he's done quite well, and Shelby definitely one of them. He scored 6 goals, which last season, which was probably his highest ever. But I honestly look at the team, and I look at every single position. I don't think there's a player that's improved. I really don't. And listen, every manager at every club.
It's worse than that, because I know we'll keep on mentioning this in every single podcast and recording that we do, but I think it's quite important to say is you look at the two Longstaffs, and of course we have been critical of both those in the past, but you would hope that there would be some sort of talent in there, and the way that they have been cast to one side as if the complete write-offs now in Bruce is phenomenal. You have to look at that a little bit more. Obviously, we saw Hendrick come on again at the weekend, and we've seen God knows how many games where he's absolutely ghosting through games. He's just not there. And Sean Longstaff, you would probably expect to be that player who would be there instead of Jeff Hendrick. And obviously, he did come on eventually at the weekend, but he probably will get his chance now with the Hayden injury, with the knee injury that Hayden's picked up. But there's has to be something happening right now behind the scenes on the likes of the training ground, because we had all this conversation about the moles in the football ground and who it was telling the press about everything which happened between Richie and Bruce. But it's not just that event. It's been a lot of things. We've had the likes of Darlow unhappy, Dubravka unhappy, Richie unhappy, both Longstaffs unhappy. And there's been lots of people, and I think you mentioned it last week, Dick, I seen that it looks like the players are still playing for Bruce, but obviously we saw the flip side of this against Brighton. Yeah. And we've heard rumours recently over the last 24 hours that players have approached Lee Charnley or tried to get in contact with Lee Charnley. The players want him gone. And there's a lot of people that say players never necessarily play for the manager, they play for the club and the crest. That's not the case. I think if you've got a decent manager in control of your team, you play for him, you run through brick walls for him. Of course you do. We saw it on Rafa Benitez, but I think now Steve Bruce has most definitely lost that dressing room.
Sorry, if that question's to me, yes, I completely agree with you. I think I just want to touch on the Longstaffs for a second there. And listen, of course, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. We don't know what happens at training, right? But I'm just going to give you two scenarios of how I think of it, right? 32 minutes now, said Rafa, so half an hour. So let's think of...
I was 6, mate.
Oh, you were 6? Sorry, you're right. Well, if you imagine a training session in a game, in the plane, I can imagine Rafa blowing his whistle every 2 minutes, running over to Sean Longstaff and says, no, you need to be looking this way. No, what about this way? For example, nurturing him and giving him more and more ideas, experience. Bruce is not going to do that. He is not going to do that. So it's no real wonder that the Longstaffs are getting worse. Do you know what I mean? Because I believe Sean Longstaff needs that guidance, would need that help. And when Rafa's left and he's experiencing daily the training sessions and the environment that's been put on, maybe even Longstaff, I'm not saying throwing the towel here, but I mean, like, maybe even he's struggling in training. And that's why he's not getting shows. I don't know. I'm just saying that as a point, But what I would say is, surely, Christ, what can Hendrick be offering in training that perhaps one of the Longstaffs isn't? It can't be much, right? If it's disappearing, all right, Hendrick will win. But what can Hendrick personally really be offering here? I mean, because he's absolutely shocking. You're a man down when he's on.
Well, one of the things I do want to mention, Mark, I'll come to you, is that you could imagine both those Longstaffs being big characters in the dressing room. We saw videos with Matty Longstaff in the past where he's on the likes of one of the physio beds talking absolute shit, like talking about conspiracies and stuff, which obviously the players were laughing at. You can't imagine them, especially with being two local lads. Same with Andy Carroll, you could imagine them being a huge influence on that dressing room. And I think if you lose those two, despite them not being key players, I think they would have a huge impact and a huge influence on the rest of the players as well. So if Steve Bruce treats those two young players who Newcastle fans are hoping that at some point they get in the first team and stay in the first team for a long period of time, if you lose their respect, then you lose the dressing room along with that.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, because people forget how young they are, particularly Matty. It was only a couple of years he was training with the youth, with the under-23s regularly, and only came across into the senior setup because we were massively under the cosh with injuries and stuff like that. So in normal circumstances, he probably wouldn't have been anywhere near the first team. He would have gone out on loans and stuff like that, got a bit of experience and then came back in. So his development is having to happen in our first team setup. And if he's not getting nurtured, which, I mean, it's clear that to see that he isn't. He's not getting that development that he needs at his age to go on to become the player that he is. And likewise, Sean, obviously he's that little bit older than Matty, but he's still a young player that needs that motivation, that encouragement to go on to realise his potential. And if they're being threatened this way by Steve Bruce, then there's probably a bit of them that is thinking, why do I bother? Why do I bother giving 100% on the training pitch week in, week out, because it gets us absolutely nowhere? I know he's not going to pick us because he's going to pick Shelby, Hayden and Hendrick. He's not going to give us a chance. If best, I'm going to get on the bench. And then do I get a run out? No, because we all know that Steve Bruce can't make a substitution. So it's their motivation has got to be absolutely rock bottom. And that's when you need somebody in and around that coaching team, the staff to be going around looking after these players, picking them up, encouraging them and doing it, because there's lots and lots of footballers go through this of not being in the team, and it can be a dark place to be in. So they need some encouragement to get out of that.
I think the problem which we have, Bestie, is that Steve Bruce has said on numerous occasions that he tried his hardest and pushed this deal for Matty Longstaff to go through. What's changed? Why has Steve Bruce tried so hard? And you could probably say the same about Andy Carroll, because Steve Bruce has given Andy Carroll that new contract as well. And I'm not Andy Carroll's biggest fan, far from it. Of course, I was a decade ago, but right now, probably not. I don't think Andy Carroll is the answer. But Steve Bruce has said, like I said, on many occasions where he couldn't see Matty Longstaff leading this club. He wanted Matty Longstaff to stay and have a decent career at the club. Steve Bruce isn't giving him a career right now.
It's really peculiar. I mean, they signed that deal, he convinced him to stay, give him the squad number 4, which would indicate that
he's going to have some sort of role.
Yeah, that to me makes me wonder if Bruce has said to him, "Oh yeah, you're going to be a first teamer. Here you are. There's number 4. There's like Kabai's old shirt, or that David Batty's old shirt, whatever. Sultan Solano's number 4 for a bit, wasn't he? And like, there you
what
are.
Did Nolan wear? What did Kevin Nolan wear?
Double XL, wasn't
it? Shout, mate. Watch out. What was it, number 4?
That was number 4, right?
Yeah, number 4, yeah.
Liam O'Brien, number 4 as well.
He was,
is this the next podcast? Is the next podcast going to be Battle of the Fours?
Squad numbers.
Finding number 4 or whatever it is. Rings a bell, that one.
Oh God, I've been thrown off now. But I don't know what was said to Matty to keep Matty at the club last summer. He must be hopping mad, because even though David Batty, John Gandy says David Batty, then he's quite correct. Like, I loved him. I love David Batty.
Oh, Mike
Focus has just said call back number 4 as well.
He'd walk in our midfield at the minute. He'd walk in it. I'm sorry, he'd walk in it.
Well, he couldn't win it, could he?
Well, everybody else is walking in it, mate.
I'm telling you now, we'd walk in it.
But like Mark mentioned earlier about how young Matty Longstaff is, and how he's still developing, which he will be, but he's older than Kai Havertz at Chelsea, and Havertz is a world class. He's a phenomenal player, but he's had the minutes in the first team at Bayer Leverkusen, came through, got a big money with the Chelsea, struggled a bit, but he's a fantastic player. And I think if you're a good enough player, it doesn't matter how old you are. I've had doubts about both Longstaff's ability since they've broken into the team, to be honest with you. They've gone no distance in my mind of kind of making us think, oh yeah, they're actually great players. They've had great moments, but Jamie McLean scored in the cup against Peterborough in his debut, and he disappeared. It happens. You get young players that come through, look great for like an hour and a half, and then they're gone, and you don't see them again. And I don't think either Longstaff brother is going to be in the first team in the Premier League for Newcastle, maybe in the Championship next season.
Do you not think we're at the point in the way where Sean Longstaff came on the scene, then obviously he was touted for a £50 million move to Man United? Do you not think some fans went with that and thought, oh, he's fantastic? And I think all of us were in the opinion where he's not as good as what it's made out to believe, and we probably would be happy to have him some sort of squad role in the team. But something which he's not necessarily getting now, or hasn't done for the last X amount of months, where he's on the bench, but he's not making those appearances when there's players ahead of him who are absolutely diabolical on the field.
Well, it might be the chance that Hayden's apparently out for the season now. So it might be the case that he gets more of a chance in the middle of the park now, because obviously that takes one. Hayden must have started every game he's been fit this season. So that takes
be in the wrong positions majority of the time.
That's a good point as well. So that means you're down to Shelby Hendricks starting. I think that's all we've got in the centre mid now, isn't it? Really? And beyond that, you've got Henry Cypher hit the Longstaffs. God knows. Dwight Gale probably hasn't played centre mid yet. I know Steve likes to try and force him in somewhere, doesn't he? So, but yeah, it's concerning. I'd love both Longstaffs to kind of turn into the, I don't know, Newcastle's equivalent to the Neville brothers, let's say, for argument's sake. I can't think of any better brothers that have played for the last couple of generations, but sadly, I just can't say it. I can't say it. Sorry, lads.
I thought Sean... sorry, Matt, you go.
I was just going to say, I think, because Chris, you mentioned there about, obviously, Sean being linked with Man United. I can guarantee if Sean had went to Man United, he still would have developed far better than he would have at this club. He wouldn't have necessarily got into the first team. He wouldn't have necessarily played as many games as he potentially could have here, but he would have been surrounded by quality players. He would have been surrounded by other young players that have got that potential, which will then drive the best out in him, and you would see him going on to have a much better career. Yes, it might take him a little bit longer to then break into their first team, but he'd be a hell of a better player for it.
Mark, I just want to interrupt you because Jess has just put something in the comments. I'll show it on screen. I'll come to you, Degger, on this one. It's another exclusive from Craig Hope. He hasn't been sacked before everybody gets excited.
Waiting for that. They built
man, don't.
He hasn't been sacked. Jess has said that's Steve Bruce scheduled 6 days off from 9 for the NUFC squad despite Brighton's surrender. So basically now the players have got 6 days off from training.
What? Like, what the fuck's going on there, man?
Let's not forget.
I don't even know.
Break, isn't it?
I did, Mark.
It doesn't matter, Mark. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Our position, I couldn't matter if we're not playing for another 4 weeks. You get those players in today and you work on things. It has to be done. It doesn't matter what sort of break it is. It doesn't matter if it's a national break, FA Cup, League Cup. It doesn't matter what it is. You get those players back in because that was an embarrassment on Saturday.
It's unbelievable that's not his first thought, right? I would have had them in on Sunday. No, I'm not being funny. Like, I mean, come on, guys. Like, that's unacceptable. That now, is he doing that because he's so much of a coward? He doesn't want to see them.
He doesn't want to see them. He's avoiding them. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, he doesn't want to have the argument, the confrontation. So he's thinking, listen, I give them 6 days off. They'll cool down. We'll start again. But that's just absolutely insane, and it upsets us more than makes us angry. If I'm honest, that the players are. Can I say be rewarded for having for the performance? Do you know what it is, though?
Imagine how fitting it would be if the players went, no, we're not taking that. We're coming in, and the players took it upon themselves to go into training to do something.
There will be players that do that. There'll be players that'll do that want to stay fit, that want to train.
They'll go to the gym and things like that.
A bit of gym and stuff like that. But then I've said.
Sorry, Mark. Sorry, apologise.
Just going to say, and then you'll have others that will absolutely take every single minute off that they're given because
Shelby's on his 5th cigar now, man.
Well, that was the first person that came to mind for me.
Yeah,
it's not coincidence. There's no coincidence here, and we say this a lot. And I said it on Saturday night. We are ran and worked against any team, totally, aren't we? We look shattered all the time. And I agree with what you're saying there. There'll be loads of players that will just take the piss and go happy days. I'm off for 6 days, pump your feet up and play PlayStation or whatever. The person who, and I don't really want to make this a rant about individuals players-wise, but I do have to mention someone, right? And I think I texted you in the group about this. I am disappointed in my captain a little bit lately, Lascelles. I really am, if I'm honest. And I don't like to criticise players too much.
Do you think, Deck, before people start jumping on this, it's not necessarily performance-wise, but it's the fact that it's your captain that should be coming out and telling it how it is right now?
Exactly that. And we talk so much about the only voice at the club, Steve Bruce's. We don't hear anything from Charney. And the only person that we have a link with as a fan is the captain. You know what I mean? And we're not even getting that. And like after the Brighton game, he didn't come out and speak to the media. I would have expected me captain to be the first one in front of a camera. It was Fraser that come out. And then if not that, when Steve Bruce is doing decisions like this, 6 days off, if I was the captain, I'd be saying, lads, we're fucking going in Monday morning. Like, let's try and, you know what I mean? Try and show some sort of togetherness as players to the likes of the fans. And also maybe to show to Steve Bruce, this is the hard work and what we need to be doing. Get your fucking arse in here.
And the thing
I'm not really saying that.
The thing is, Bessie, you've got some players who must be close to coming back. Obviously, Almiron. Obviously, did Almiron play almost? Was it 80 odd minutes or something?
60 minutes.
Was it 60?
Yeah,
Or did he get 12? Right. So you got Almiron, who's just back to fitness. You got Callum Wilson, who's on the brink of coming back. So they would probably be the players in the gym. But you still need to work on the field. You have to, no matter what. Especially in the position we are at right now.
You should be doing work on the field. You should be doing homework. We'll mention the comparison with the previous manager a couple of times. His name escapes us at the moment, but how methodical he was, and not just him. Guardiola will be doing it. Jurgen Klopp will be doing it. Solskjaer, maybe he's not actually, but some of the managers at the top clubs will be using national breaks to go, right, Newcastle play Tottenham, isn't it? Next game after the national break. By the time that game comes around, they should know their shoe sizes, their kids' middle names. You should know everything there is to know about how Tottenham Hotspur play football. There should be absolutely no doubt. Everyone should know their job. Everyone should know exactly where they're meant to be, because that's what a manager should be doing. That's what a coaching staff should be doing. It's not just getting up and being happy playing football. Football as a professional is probably really boring because you've got to follow instructions. You can't just do what you do when you're a kid and chase the ball around and like threes in or whatever. Like, you've got to be so strict and so structured, and we don't have it. And if that's right, what Jess has put in, what Craig Hope said about them missing 6 days out of 9, all that says to me is they aren't preparing for Tottenham. They're just not. They're not going to bother with it.
It's like, we'll worry about that next week.
They're going to turn up on the day. They're going to give it a good. They're going to roll their sleeves up, take their gloves off. They're going to have a very good go, and then we'll probably get 4 or 5 out, and then it's always next weekend. There's always Burnley.
We'll roll with sleeves up for the next game.
It's
just think back to Saturday night. How many times did we say, what is the formation? Why are the people standing in bunches on the pitch? They're all over the place. And that comes from having a lack of understanding of tactics, a lack of understanding of formation, a lack of understanding of how you set up as a team, a lack of understanding of how you counteract the opposition that you're playing. And that all stems from having an absolutely pathetic and useless coach in charge of your team. It's as simple as that.
It's not just that, Mark. I will come back to you, but you mentioned one coach there. So you've got one pathetic coach there, but you've got 3 coaches giving one player different instructions by the looks of it. When we saw that against Brighton, it was pointed out why we were doing that. Well, I watched along. Graham Jones was, I think it might have been Almiron who was on the sideline. Another player, might be Fraser, can't remember, on the sideline. And Jones has told them the next minute Bruce comes in, pushes in between them, and he starts telling them something. Then you've got Agnew over the other shoulder telling another player something. Is it the same instruction getting delivered by all 3 coaches? Because I bet you it's not.
Well, most of the time when you see it on the touchline, it's Jones and Agnew are hovering around an iPad looking and talking to each other, and Bruce is just standing there gormless looking as usual. So it's them looking at the plan and how things are going up, but then it's where are the players on the pitch expecting the information to come from? We know it doesn't come from Bruce. We sit and watch it. We can see that he hardly ever speaks to them, or he'll give them a little bit of encouragement with simple instructions. But you need more than that, and that is the part that we're missing. And that has to come from, if you don't have the skills as the head coach or the manager or whatever your job title is you have people around that can do it for you. We all know that when you look at the great managers and great coaches, they have a very, very good assistant and a very good team behind them. What they don't have is what we've got.
Do you not think, Degger, do you not think it's we've been so spoiled with Rafa Benitez, because he used to micromanage every single player on that field to the point where I mentioned this in the live stream, or the instant reaction, it was one of them. We could be beating games and winning teams 2-3-4-0, Rafa Benitez would always find something that a player did wrong and say, right, next time, you don't do that. You don't do that. And I mentioned that Steve Bruce, you'll be on a defeat of 3-4-0. And Steve Bruce will say, well, this player did this well. This player did that well. It's a complete opposite what you're getting with what's happened previously and what's happened now. Hence why we're not progressing. We're dropping back over.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, God, I mean, it used to always happen when we scored a goal. I used to always feel, I was still celebrating the goal. And I'd look down and
Paul Dummett used to get it in the neck every single game.
Every time, or it was Hayden, and he was telling them, and it is right. Like them little moments in games are the difference between finishing 19th or 17th to 10th. Them little moments in games, I think, are huge in regards to getting the points that you require. And we've lost that, we have. And what I will say is, when the ball goes out of play, I think there's always a huddle next to our dugout, and
there's a few players over there. Yeah.
Oh, there is. But I don't trust in anything that information is getting relayed to them. I don't, because how many times have we sat and watched a game, the four of us, right? And we know within probably, and we're not coaches, got no qualifications, right? But within 10 minutes, there's a problem here. You can see it. There's a problem here, maybe the left-hand side of the field or whatever it may be. There's a break in play. They come over to the sideline. You see them pointing and you see them chatting. Think, right, great. You must have surely sorted this one out. And the same problem just keeps happening again and again. And I've said this quite a lot. It beggars belief as to what is happening on the sidelines, what is happening in training, or really the lack of what's happening in training. They're not even there. And I'll come back to the first point that we're talking about. You've just been humbled against Brighton, absolutely battered, right? Against a team that was right next to you and you needed to win. And your first reaction is, one, I'm not going to speak to the players after the game, because that didn't happen, as we know. And then I'm going to give you 6 days off out of the 9 days. I mean, what's going through your head here to think that? And I cannot believe Ashley or Charnley thinks that that's all right. To be really honest, like, surely them have caught wind of that. And that just proves how ridiculously unintelligent them are as well.
Speaking about people being unintelligent, I am going to come to you, Bessie, but I'm not saying you're unintelligent at this point. Just that little like crossover didn't really work. But what I want to mention is the pundits. We'll mention them earlier on. But our good friend Alex Hurst did make an appearance on 5 Live earlier on. Bessie, I'm sure you said beforehand you didn't catch the interview itself, but you didn't have to, really. Obviously, Alex is very well spoken, very knowledgeable when it comes to Newcastle United and the current going-ons, what's happening. I think Alex probably hits the nail on the head almost every single time when it comes to fan opinion in regards to what's happening both on and off the field. He was on 5 Live, and despite everything which Alex said, which was 100% correct from start to finish, there's certain pundits out there which don't even listen. They'll let somebody talk, but despite what they say, it's just they'll let them talk, but they're not listening to what they're saying, and it seems as if they've always got a counter argument before the conversation's ever happened. So Alex mentioned the fact that Joe Linton plays every single game, scored 2-3 goals in the Premier League since his arrival in the Premier League, something ridiculous like that. And Alex said, "Why is he still playing?" That decision lands with Steve Bruce and nobody else. And the counter argument by Chris Sutton, as it always is, well, Dwight Gale and Andy Carroll must not be doing something right in training. I don't believe that for 1 second, mate.
No, do I. It really baffles us when you've got... It's, to me, I saw a thing put out not long before Alex went on, and I will agree, Alex is... if you're going to have anyone representing you as a fan base on something like that, you'd want Alex, because he's articulate, and like, if it was me, I would just start tripping over words. I would get irritated, and I would make a tip myself. Whereas you've got someone who, with a bit of a cooler demeanour, who can kind of, as I say, articulate better. But I think I read that it was Sutton and Savage said they just like winding fans up. And there was another one.
They done it again last weekend as well, mate. They said that they do it for a reaction live on air.
And it was Peter Crouch who said, I just like Steve Bruce.
The most recent one with Peter Crouch was, I like Steve Bruce, that's why I defended him.
So, to me, Sutton and Savage in particular, Crouch, I like Peter Crouch, so I'm not going to have a go at him, which is ironic given that's exactly the same attitude as he's got. The Sutton and Savage thing, I mean, they're both employed, they both do pretty much every second game on BT Sports. if you've got people, if you're employing people to commentate on games that'll willfully take the piss out of half of the people that are watching any given game, then you're doing something wrong for me. Like, that's not what they're there for. They're not there to get a rise out of fans and irritate them, but they're there to commentate in the game and give you snippets of.
They are there for a platform for fans to interact, like especially with the radio show. They're there to let fans have an opinion.
That's one of the reasons I'll never listen to TalkSport. One of many reasons I'll never listen to TalkSport. They exist solely to get you to ring in, and they irritate you on purpose. So you ring up and go, "I can't believe you've just said this. I'm very annoyed about this," and that you're going to. The longer you talk to them, the more money they get off it. Basically, and they get their sponsors. It's a shite business model, and it's so devalued the kind of the conversation around football, because it's just becomes, it's so like heated, and there's so much hatred, and there's so much like just abuse at every turn. And I understand that we're a podcast and we give Steve Bruce quite a bit of abuse quite often, like, but we're allowed.
I'll jump in. I'll jump in there, Bessie, because you mentioned abuse, and did both of you listen to Decker, Mark?
I listened to it all, yeah.
Right. I'll come to you, Decker. Micah Richards kept on going, but it's not right for fans to give Steve Bruce personal. Well, I called him Steve Abuse, didn't I? Steve Bruce personal abuse, and I think that's what was Richards' opinion before the interview even started. Once again, because he mentioned it twice during that, and he tried to throw Alex off at one point. And I think the abuse and the personal abuse, which has been aimed at Steve Bruce, if it's aimed at any human being, of course, nobody's condoning that. Of course they're not. And that's not why Alex was on there. Alex wasn't on there to basically say, yes, it's wrong for that to have happened. He was there to give his opinion on what's happening at the football club right now. The abuse which is landed at Steve Bruce's doorstep is very few. There's not many of it, mate. It's a very minority of the fan base. The majority of the fan base are criticizing Bruce because of the performances and the way which he's came out, and he slated the fans. Let's not be beat about the bush about it. He has slated the fans in the past, and fans have got every single right to have an opinion on the likes of the performances, and this is what the likes of Micah Richards was getting. He just kept on going back to this personal abuse. Nobody's condoning that. We are criticizing the performances.
Yeah, and I thought Alex handled the whole interview fantastically well. But in that moment, he really did incredibly well, because I think, as Bessie said, I probably would have just retaliated, probably, to be honest with you, because it was just pissing us off. He was talking about abuse before, and he was trying to say it's mass hysteria. And he wasn't meaning, every time he said keyboard warriors and stuff like that, he's not meaning like attacks on him. He keeps meaning like that we're taking bad runs or bad performances or bad results.
An overreaction.
Yeah, as an overreaction. That's what he keeps saying. That's the problem, right? And I know Mickey Richards said, what he said, and I want to touch on what Sutton was trying to say. Every single time Alex said any good point, Sutton was just immediately coming back with, well, you finished 13th last season, or was the football good under Rafa? It's like, well, you're not listening to what he's actually presenting. You've asked him a question, and he's presenting really, really good stats back to you, and good insight to how the club's sort of ran or performing. And he just kept coming back with like real childish little digs. And one he said afterwards, when Alex actually left the call, it had finished. I must admit, there was some other lad, and I'm not sure who it was really speaking
Rory.
sense, to be fair.
I think Rory I want to say he's predominantly, I think he was a YouTuber, mate, and I think he's worked his way into the likes of the media. If I remember right, I think it's a kid with the long hair that goes on through GEORDIE show. Might be completely wrong. Might be completely wrong. But I think it is.
Anyway, he spoke brilliantly at the end about his opinion and how he sees it, And then Sutton said, well, while that was playing good football last season, he's been sacked. And then that kid, that was Rory or whatever you've said there, says, what on earth does that have to do about...
It's got no relevance, he said. It's got no relevance to this conversation.
Like, what are you doing? And it is infuriating. And I think there's a lot of pundits out there that you cannot change their mind. But what I will say, Crouch, for example, saying that I was defending him because he was his mate, but now tonight, I believe he's come out and said, do you know what it is actually? No, not that, Rory. Well, he's came out tonight and says, I was wrong. I defended him because he was my friend and he was my mate and I liked him. But I have to admit now, and I don't really have much of a problem with that when someone's willing. Ian Wright did it. I remember Ian Wright finally came out when, you know, it's actually, I hold my answer, but I've got this all wrong. Jamie Carragher's done it recently as well. Carragher was always against her, and then he's recently sort of span it and went, you know, it's actually, I think I got this wrong. Not everybody's right all the time. And it's just like, so your Suttons and your Savages, I think, do it to get something out of you. Do you know what I mean? To get a rile, to get views. And that's frustrating. Even Collymore, for Christ's sake, who I hate. Collymore has even started to be on our side, which I can't believe I've been saying that. But I mean,
we don't mention him on this channel and podcast, mate.
Potato head, but you know what I mean? Like, it's, but I do get, I kind of understand sometimes when someone will have their opinion, but when they hold their hands up and go, actually, you know, I've getting this situation totally wrong, then fair play, all right, fair, move on. But there's too many of them that just will not change.
The top and bottom of the reason
you're on mute, Bestie.
He's frozen, I think, hasn't he?
No, too tall. Carry on, Mark.
Is he going? He's confusing now because he's either holding his breath and standing very still.
Once again, this is horrendous for our audio podcast.
I know.
Sorry,
it's horrendous for me for a minute there. The top and bottom of why we aren't happy with Steve Bruce is quite simply because of what happens on the pitch. It's because we've, as is massively been spoken about, is because we've won 2 out of 20 of our last games. But even looking beyond that, you know, we've just talked about Rafa, and like you've just said that Chris Sutton tried to use that as an argument. I said this the other night, but what Chris Sutton needs to understand is Steve Bruce came in, inherited a team that Rafa had consistently got to a level of finishing comfortably in the top half to mid-table of that team, that were organised, that were drilled. We didn't concede a lot of goals, and we were looking at an improvement on the attacking things. Steve Bruce has came in and spent over £100 million and has taken the team backwards. In the meantime,
as a fan, Mark, I have to be honest on this one, right? Defensively, you've hit the nail on the head. Of course, we don't look anywhere near as solid at the back, but I think we'll have to remember that we did lose Rondon and Perez, who were our top goal scorers during Rafa's thing. So I think we'll have to be honest on that one. But I get what you're saying defensively.
We've equally brought in St. Maximum and Wilson to come into the team, which is where the money's been spent in, and Fraser as well. So, but in that time, we've gone from having that solid back line to spending money in an attack to do it, and we've now gone into a situation where we've only scored more than 2 goals on 5 occasions in his entire time here. We've only scored 66 goals in 67 games under Steve Bruce.
That's unacceptable. Right?
That is the reason why we don't want Steve Bruce at this club, because the football is terrible. We do not attack. We cannot defend. We create nothing. We have 29% possession. We've had 14 games, I think it is, with 0 shots on target. That is the facts. That is why we don't want Steve Bruce at this club. It's not because we don't like him. It's not because we've got an agenda against him. It's not because we love Rafa and we hate Steve Bruce. It's quite simply because of those stats. He's not good enough, and those stats prove it time after time. So I don't care what the pundits say about what football was like under Rafa, why we don't like him. That is the top and bottom of it. It's not good enough. Look at the stats. It proves he's not good enough at it. That's why we don't want him anywhere near the club.
Yeah. I do want to say before when you further that people that are listening to the audio that I did get that Rory wrong. It wasn't the Rory that is pals with the true Geordie. It was Rory from the New York Times. Either way, he spoke sense at times.
He did. No, he really did.
He did speak. He said something else. Like I know you mentioned that he said that there's no relevance on that one, but I think he said, "I've never played for Steve Bruce. I don't know Steve Bruce personally. Steve Bruce just exists to me."
That's right. Yeah, that's why he said. Yeah, he had no agenda either side. He's just calling down the middle. Is what he's saying. And I think that's the way that I think most pundits would be. Someone put an amazing thing on. It's a bit off the Bruce subject, this a little bit, but in regards to Ashley, if you think when Ashley came in. And you look at Spurs, he used Spurs as a sort of the other club, if you like. And you imagine Spurs had been taken over and got relegated twice, like we have, and possibly a third time. Can you imagine the uproar? I feel there would be absolute uproar in the media across the board. Every single pundit would be saying it's a disgrace to see a club like Spurs in this position. But remember when Ashley took over, we were ahead of Spurs, right? In regards to, we were always in the Champions League, or certainly in Europe,
wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, had been for like 15 years, yeah.
Absolutely right, mate. And it's quite. I just feel that the narrative, if it had been Spurs in this situation, they'd just be hell on week after week after week. Every single press person will be on their side, ex-player. And for some reason, for us, it's like it's not allowed. And another thing, and I will shut up after this, I promise. Gary Neville pisses off today as well. So Gary Neville is been banging the drum about. He said it on his weekly podcast he does after the Sunday night game. He does a podcast every game after. Does a podcast after every match on the Sunday that he commentates on. And he said on there about Steve Bruce, he went, no, they'll stick with him. Mike Ashley's the owner, he's allowed to do what he wants. He should stick with him. And he said the best, I think, face to face, that what do you expect? You almost deserve him. He's good enough. And then he's just went. Newcastle. You Newcastle? That's what you deserve. He's just went and sacked. He's another manager. I think that's 4 managers in about 2 years.
4 months, I think he's been there.
Unbelievable. And then in the same breath, he's saying to us, no, you stick with your manager. You've got to believe in him and all this bullshit. And then he's sacking his gaffer every 5 minutes. So sorry, I'll move on. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm going to start to wind it down. We've been going for an hour and 5, which is quite a length if we're going to convert this as audio as well.
That's what she said.
Anything that you boys want to talk about before we're wrapping this
There was just, I was going to mention this before when something that you mentioned, because Decker's just reminded us they're talking about Spurs. And Spurs sprung to mind because when you said earlier about the fact that Ashley had made the decision where he didn't want to be putting money in every January, every transfer window and stuff like that. You look at it at a club where, yes, you might need to do that at the start of things to start investing. But if you get a club and you nurture it and turn it into a successful club, you run it correctly on and off the pitch, then that club will make a profit. That club can become self-sufficient in the money that it generates. Spurs is a massive example to that. As Bessie's just said, we were head and shoulders above them, a few years back before Ashley came into the mix. You now look at the turnover that Spurs has got. It's well documented, the kit deals that they get, the advertisement deals, the sponsorship that they get, the money that they generate is frightening. It's millions and millions and millions. There's no reason why Newcastle could not have done that. If anything, we should have found it easier to do that because we're a one city club. We're in the northeast where everybody lives and breathes football. Wherever you go on holiday and stuff like that, as we've talked in the past, everybody knows who Newcastle is and stuff like that. So you could have taken that club and just nurtured it to create something like what Spurs have done. And you look at Spurs sitting there now with the stadium that they've got, with the players that they've got, with the managers that they've got in. And that's why we as Newcastle fans, we look at things like that and say, well, why can't we do that? Why can't that be us? We're not expecting it to be us, but with the right management, the right off-field business and stuff like that, that could have very, very easily have been us. And then Ashley wouldn't have needed to put his own money in. He wouldn't have had to be bailing out. He wouldn't have to be spending money every transfer window because the club would have generated its own revenue to be able to do that. And that is what frustrates us as fans when we look at where we could have been with the right motivation, the right business model and the right owner to take us forward and realise and show a little bit of ambition. That's what you could have by doing things in that way.
Do you know what it is, though? Like, how many times have we been in this one? That I will make this one the last question. But how many times have we been in this position where we always think that now Mike Ashley can change it as owner, where that chance has been there? There must be about 4 or 5 times in the last 13, 14 years where Mike Ashley has had that chance to do something and he makes a wrong decision every single time. You could have a list of 10 decisions to make and he'd pick number 10 every single time.
Yeah.
That's spot on that.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking.
You think back to the summer after they finished 5th, and we mentioned this last week or the weekend, and they only brought in Vernon Anita. Yeah. A big Romana, and I think Olivia.
Amalfitano, I think.
Yes, Amalfitano came in then as well. You look at obviously the most recent big ones, Rafa. That Fulham away game, the 1-4-0 down at Craven Cottage, you think, right, if we can keep hold of Benitez, there could be something starting here. not winning the league, I don't think, but this could be the start of a
progression. Just progressing. That's all that we wanted.
That's the word, progression.
Try and get into Europe maybe in a couple of years. Try and get a decent cup run, and then like Chris said there, what's the worst possible thing I could do? And it was pick Steve Bruce. And Steve Bruce was never the right, even before he signed. Like, you wouldn't, if he left now and Newcastle said, "Oh, we're going to appoint Kenny Jackett, or we're going to appoint Ian Holloway," you'd go like, "Oh, fuck, no, I don't think so, mate." Like, because you know that they're not good enough before they've even got the job. And Bruce is like that. Joe Kenny always like that.
And that's what Chris mentioned there, which was right, is that you've made them mistakes before, and he's been in front of getting an interview before and says, "I've learned from that. I should have never sacked Chris Hughton at that time." The West Ham game, he came out with this massive thing, and then you're moving on 8-9 years, and there's a massive mistake, employing the wrong person once again. And the other thing that I still can never work out, I mean, was it Harris Fukic recently? I think no. Sorry, I apologise. That's wrong. Sorry, totally apologise. But there was a young player recently said in the paper that not 23 is just horrific.
Fernandez was not one of the
Victor Fernandez said how poorly, it's just a shambles and they don't care about it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you think if you've got a person, right, who doesn't want to spend any money, would invest in the academy and then produce free players? Surely. That's just a given, right? But the problem is from the very, very top, the club it's rotten. It's rotten. And if it's rotten at the top, it filters down pretty quickly. And that's the biggest issue. We all know who the biggest problem is, and it's just upsetting, isn't it? Really, I think when you think of a bigger picture, it's just upsetting.
We know who the kingpin is. Where obviously the blame always lands at his door. But then, like you said, as it filters down, there's a lot of people that need to take responsibility for their roles as well. You've got Lee Charney, absolute ghost in it. No idea where he is. Like Bessie mentioned last week, he comes out I would probably say on a quarterly basis throughout the season, saying that they're going to connect more with the fans and communicate more with the fans. Never happens. It hasn't happened for God knows how many years. Probably never under Mike Ashley, to be honest with you. And then you drop right down to the likes of the manager. Absolutely winging it, no plan, no structure, no in-game tactics, no pre-game tactics, nothing. Then you filter right down to the playing staff, and some of those just don't give a shit. And you can clearly see on the field that they don't care. They've lost all respect for the football club, and they don't really care. And probably one of the reasons for that is because the fans aren't in the ground as well.
Yeah, definitely. I saw the point made this weekend that I think we played Brighton the first home game of the season, didn't we? And I think we were saying then that Brighton's, for all Newcastle and Brighton came up together, it was only that Steve Sidwell goal. No. That goal, Jack Grealish goal against Brighton that won us the league that time round in 2017. And look at Brighton now, for all they were 1 point ahead of it before that game. They've got a good young manager. They've got a team that know how to play football. And if Brighton keep on going the way they are, I don't think they'll be in too much danger next couple of seasons either. They're a team that are doing what's right. And this is their first goal in the Premier League. Brighton haven't been a top-flight club for 30-odd years before they came up with us.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 39 just turned, and I can't remember Brighton being in the Premier League, Division 1 as it was, when I was a kid. So it was before my kind of comprehension of football, really. And so they're not an established, it's not like Newcastle coming back, or Newcastle are back up, Villa are back up. Even Leeds are back up. Leeds are, to me, a Premier League club for all it's the first season back up. Brighton are a club that, like, historically to me, haven't been, but now they are becoming established, and you can see them getting better because they're well run. They've got a good, decent young manager, and they're making some good appointments on the pitch.
Do you know what is best? I think you could probably look throughout the league and look at each single team and think they improved in this area. Then you look at Newcastle United, and I couldn't tell you one single area where we are improving.
Even like Fulham, Norwich came up, and I don't think they had any intention of staying up because the money was going into Colney, which is their training complex, just out of the city. So they knew that the money that they weren't going to spunk money on stupid players or big contracts for shit managers. They said, right, that money's coming into the club, and it's going to generate a club. What Declan said about getting young players coming through. And obviously they won't be bearing the fruit of that just yet because it's just happened. But then you look at the young players Norwich have got coming through, like the Todd Cantwell, who I don't really like, but a good player. The Murphys came through Norwich. There's something there, and all it will take is the right manager and a little bit of good luck, and they could be a Premier League club again for a good 10, 15-year stretch. And Newcastle just don't have it's rotten from the top down, like Declan says, and I'm kind of going to contradict that by saying it's the foundation's up. But it's the same thing. It's the same point being made. It's Mike Ashley's the foundations, and he's as rotten as they come. He is, for all he's technically a fit and proper person, and he probably would pass the test again. He's just got no interest in running a football club properly. He couldn't give a monkey's fuck.
I think Neil put in the comments as well. As soon as that deal from PIF got accepted, Ashley clocked out.
Oh yeah. Well, I think I clocked out before that, but I agree with you. Yeah, I do agree with that. Yeah,
flashed.
I really do.
Sorry,
yeah.
No, Karen, I forgot some one more thing.
No, it was just very, very quickly about Brighton, and I think I've been a big advocate of them for a long time, and I got criticised for saying it because I think we finished above them last season. But yet again, they've only won one. But they had only won one home league game so far this season. But I've been impressed every single time I've watched them. Personally, I have. And again, I come back to that game on Saturday. The gulf in class in every single area of the pitch, and that is so. How can that not worry the powers that be and go, Jesus? We've just been absolutely battered here twice, really, off them. But the first one was so early on in the season. But you think that was the first home game, and we've played them now so late on, and it's the same result, same performance, probably worse performance if I'm honest.
Same amount of shots on target.
There you go. So how if you go, if it was my job, I'd have to go to my boss and say, right, this is what's happened here.
I haven't improved in the last 10 months
at all. In 10 months, nothing's changed, Gaffer. Right, you're off. That surely, but
yeah. Any points that anybody wants to quickly make before we end this one tonight? Nothing. We're good. Mark, if it seemed like you're on the verge of saying something there,
I thought as well.
You went.
I'm just devoid of hope anymore for us to like that. We've got any way out of this, and like I said on Saturday, the only glimmer of hope is that you think, are they just maybe squirreling away in the background of potentially working on something?
Squirreling away, is that like a new phrase or something? Squirreling away, I've never heard that.
Squirreling away, that's it.
Squirreling away, it's a thing like that.
Proper saying that.
I must admit, I've never heard it.
If you do think back to McLaren, both the same on the beaver and squirreling. I don't know.
I've not seen any beavers not around the trees around here, mind.
Well, that's it. So, but it's if you think when McLaren went, it took a few days for that to happen, didn't it? There was loads and loads of rumours that he was going in and out of the training ground, smiling and all of that kind of thing. The security guard became the most photographed person in the Northeast every day with him going in and out, and then finally it happened. So,
I still think it'll be sat like it's going to come.
And that's what I'm thinking is like, are they trying something to try and do something in the background? I think it's just blind hope from me that is something, because I honestly do think that we're stuck with him until the end of the season, until we get relegated, and then they'll have to make a decision, and then he'll go.
Bruce wants a payout. He wants a payout, and I think he will get the payout eventually. It's just a matter of case of whether that be in the next couple of weeks. If it'll be in the Championship when we're sitting 12th in the Championship with 10 games to go, he's going to get binned at some point. He has to.
Wouldn't it be mad? Wouldn't it be mad if them 6 players apparently who rang Charlie went, how much is his compensation? 4 million. How well, lads?
Let's just have a whip round.
Let's have a whip round and give them a fuck.
We'll chip in.
But right, Ashley's pinning on all his hopes that we're going to get Saint back, we're going to get Wilson back, and that we'll have enough just to get those points to sneak over the line. I mean, I said this like I think it was maybe even when Bruce got the job, and like you just kind of laughed a little bit because when I said that the only kind of KPI or what he is asked to do every season is to keep us up, and there was kind of a little bit of thought around, well, surely he's got to want more than that. He's want to get up the lead, and I was like, his job is to finish minimum a 4th bottom every season. And
well, I think obviously what we heard when Bruce first arrived was Bruce was saying that he wanted to take the club forward. He wanted to be challenging for the top 10. It's been far from that, and this is the point where we'll call it a night on this one. Thanks to everybody who has watched tonight. There's been hundreds of these tonight. If you do want to like the video, we'll massively appreciate that. If you want to become a member, even better. If you're listening to the audio podcast, please subscribe to the audio feeds as well, and you'll get every single update from audio podcasts. We've got more stuff coming this week, as always. We do have extra time coming. I'm not sure which day that is going to be recorded, but it will be coming at some point this week. We have a live interview and a live question answer part 2 with Ryan and Taylor.
Rylan?
It's not two separate
Rylan,
faces.
that guy
It's
off
Ryan
X Factor,
Taylor.
him with
It's
the
one
teeth.
person. It's one person. Ryan Taylor is coming back on Thursday night at 7:30. So if you do want to tune in for that one, Bestie might even join with to watch along with that one. You might even get a chance to watch part 1 at some point. So Ryan Taylor actually approached us to do part 2, and he messaged us earlier in the week saying that he's looking forward to it because he's got some truths to say about how players should be reacting to this sort of result in a must-win game. So that is going to be a decent one. But yeah, that's it from us this evening. We do have another podcast. I think, is Daryl doing his Magpie memoirs this week? He did say he was going to do one, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we're
so
not
there's
allowed to say who.
No, that's why
okay.
Surprise.
Well, I just did. Daryl does have another podcast coming out this week as well, so that will be going out as audio. Yeah, thanks for watching.
We might be back next week with something as well.
Yeah,
if nothing else happens,
we probably got plenty of nights free next week to do something. So I'm pretty sure we'll jump on and do something else. We do have 2 extra kits to do for Battle of the Kits.
You're giving all
let's see what we'll come up with. Let's see what we'll come up with.
We'll be back before that for the Bruce out one when he's gone. We'll be back well before this kit one. Don't worry.
Fingers crossed. And I think Matty might have a podcast coming this week as well. Matty and Jack were hoping to get a couple of fans. Chris has managed. So hoping to get something there. Hoping to get something there. But yeah, thanks very much, everybody.
Cheers.
Watch what you're doing. Stay safe. Wash your hands, as Bestie always says.
Please wash your hands.
Once again, congratulations, Mr. Best.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm already knackered.
Tough work, mate.
All the come. Job well done. Cheers, boys.
good night.